Welcome back to Awaken with Me, helping you become aware and empowered on all things health and wellness on your health and healing journey. Hello, and welcome back to Awaken with Me. Today, our guest is Mayara Sosa. Mayara grew up in Brazil and she had to overcome a very adverse and traumatic childhood. She has a history of physical, mental, and sexual abuse that led her into an intense dependency on alcohol since her early years. Mayara finally moved to America in her mid-20s when she started her healing process that continues to evolve every day. Today, after a decade of healing work and extensive research on trauma and consciousness, she is a certified sound therapist and uses acoustic sound to relax the nervous system, helping her clients to release emotions that might be trapped somewhere in the body, causing mental, physical, and emotional imbalance and distress. Welcome, Mayara. It's so nice to have you on Awaken with Me. I'm excited for our chat.
Hi, Nikki. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the invite. I appreciate being here.
Awesome. So let's start with you telling us. I read a little bit in your bio, but telling us a little bit about how you got started in alternative health.
Yes. So, as you said, I finally came to America when I was on my mid 20s. And a few years after, I started realizing like I always wanted to move here to quote unquote have a better life. And
Mm-hmm.
once I got here, it's kind of like I brought the addiction with me. So life didn't change that much. I was
Mm-hmm.
just in a different location per se. And
Mm-hmm.
after a few years, I realized that I was the one that needed to change for things to change in my life. And
Mm-hmm.
the beginning of everything was the fact that my father had a heart attack at 37 years old and he passed away. And I was only 4. And so I was told that he was a very aggressive alcoholic and all the story that came with it. And because I was drinking heavily, I started, correlating everything. And what we are told throughout our lives is that we inherit the same genes. And so we have chronic conditions and things that run in the family. And that scared me because I was getting close to my 30s. And so what I did was I started by researching heart condition because I was kind of scared that I was doomed to have a heart condition because of the fact that my father passed so prematurely from a heart attack. And
Mm-hmm.
as soon as I started researching, it was actually very kind of freeing to me because one of the first things that I came across was epigenetics. And I learned
Mm-hmm.
that our environment influences which genes are going to be turned on or not.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was very freeing because it kind of showed me that yes, we do carry the genes of, families and stuff like that. But that's very little compared to what is the cause of the development of chronic conditions like that. And so the majority of the reason for the development of the chronic condition is the environment itself. It's like the lifestyle, the environment that we are providing for our genes, for our cells in our bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
to me it was kind of a click, like an aha moment of like, well, it sounds to me that it's a lot easier to change lifestyle, even though it's not like the easiest thing, but it
Mm-hmm.
sounds a lot easier to change lifestyles than, the genes that I came with. So that's when everything started. I started researching more on changing lifestyle and living like a healthier lifestyle rather than
Mm-hmm.
researching on it specifically, like, heart conditions, how can I work my way around and all that. It was more about lifestyle. And then all the doors started opening with all the practices that I do and teach today.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God, I love it so much. You said so many great things just now, and the main point is like taking back your power, right? because you mentioned location, right? So a lot of times we think that we could just go somewhere and things will just change automatically.
Uh-huh.
But we need to do the personal work, right? Which is what you ended up doing by, first of all, doing your research and not just accepting the fact that, oh, you have these DNAs and they will become yours and you have to inherit these behaviors, that you do have the ability to create change in your life, which is what you did by creating a better environment for yourself.
Hmm. Yeah, that's right. I feel like that was the biggest aha. It was like, well, I have power over this. If I can figure it
Yeah.
out how to change the way I'm doing things, I will change
Mm-hmm.
the genes that are being turned on or off. And then I started my first thing that came up for me on changing lifestyle was meditation. And that was a
Mm-hmm.
huge piece of my whole process of healing. After that was
Mm-hmm.
just like more and more tools adding up to meditation. But that was like the first thing that just blew my mind on the benefits and what it could do for me.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Hmm.
And tell us, what is a sound therapist?
A sound therapist is a pretty cool person. So so anyways, I started with meditation and came across all the other things, like, the way we eat and how we take care of our environment and the information that we
Mm-hmm.
allow in, through music, what we watch, and all of that stuff. And I came across sound for healing. And that was a very, I want to say, like, a very natural part of the whole process, because I was always intrigued by, like, the way a single song can totally change how you're feeling. Like, if
Mm-hmm.
you're feeling down or whatever it is, whatever has happened, you listen to that song. We all have that song, and then we
Mm-hmm.
just, shift. Our emotions, or our feelings just shift, and we just,
Mm-hmm.
some people even like want to dance to the song.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't like so new that sound has an effect on us. But the way that people are using it for healing specifically, that was more curious to me, and I started researching a deeper on how does that work, like, what is the
Mm-hmm.
science behind it. And the science behind it is fascinating, especially on a time like today, where quantum physics is showing us that, on a molecular level, everything is pretty much the same. It's just this little ball of energy vibrating around. So,
Mm-hmm.
and then the sound wave is also this vibration, which, they interact and they influence each other. They affect each other. So I use tuning forks to tune the body. We call this method biofield tuning. It's the tuning of the electromagnetic field around our bodies. And we also use vibration therapy. So it's sound and vibration therapy, because we use weighted forks that don't produce a sound, but they do vibrate very intensely, and we strike them and place them directly on the body, and you can
Mm-hmm.
feel that vibration travel throughout your whole body. And that brings
Mm-hmm.
adjustment. Whatever type of adjustment we are looking for comes through this vibration placed directly on the body, or the sound
Mm-hmm.
waves that come from the unweighted forks that hit the body and produces an effect. The body listens to itself, how it's vibrating, and balance itself
Mm-hmm.
and harmonize itself. It's pretty much like the body doing the healing, but it needs some sort of input from the environment. Hence, epigenetics again. When
Yeah.
it receives these harmonized vibration, sound vibration frequency from the environment, it harmonizes itself. So the body is doing the whole thing. The sound therapist is just a pretty cool person holding the forks.
Sounds great.
Isn't it cool?
Um, because I know you work with trauma. So tell us a little bit, what is trauma and our relationship between trauma and our health.
Yeah. So trauma, trauma can be defined by so many ways. Like one of the first things that comes up for me, it's what the trauma can do to our memories. It really like Levine, Peter Levine, I think it's his name. He writes a lot on
Mm,
trauma, and he talks about
yeah.
the disorganized memory from traumatic experiences, and so much so that like we forget a lot of what has happened to us in childhood when we come from a traumatic childhood as a form of defense mechanism, because it's almost like if the brain will ponder around all of that information, it's very overwhelming to keep developing, to go through teenage years and become an adult and have yourself together. So as a form of a defense mechanism, we forget most of the traumatic things that had happened to us when we were too young, so that we can function, we can have ourselves together and have some sort of mental health. And that's pretty much what happened to me. My childhood was a blur. It was very confusing for me to remember what has happened until I started my healing process and it started bringing more awareness and, a lot of meditation, a lot of practices allowing me to remember to go back there and be able to heal. And in this method, specifically biofield tuning, we look at it as our experiences are the lenses within which we perceive the reality for ourselves. So much so that if you and I look at the same situation, we will probably read it very differently. I'm going to
Hmm.
observe some aspects of the situation, and you might observe very different aspects of that same situation that I might be missing, and vice
Hmm.
versa. And the way we look at it through this method of biofield tuning is that our experiences are those lenses responsible for our filtering of the reality we are perceiving. And so when you show up to your reality carrying all of this baggage, all of this trauma from the past, all of that trauma it's kind of like it's in between you and the situation. So you are perceiving that situation through all of that trauma. And when we use the forks and the sound frequency allows those blockages of energy throughout the body to be released, it's where, let's say, those blocks in your electromagnetic field, they are dissolved, the blocks of energy of experiences that you had that were traumatizing, that shocked you in some way, that caused
Hmm.
those blocks of energy. If they are released, dismantled and released and back into circulation the way energy should be in our body, in our fields, you don't have those filters anymore. You perceive your
Hmm.
reality just for what it is. You don't have to
Hmm.
judge it coming from your experiences, from your background. You are just
Hmm.
perceiving it clearly as is. So that's what we call, healing the traumas from the past, when we are able to liberate these traumatic experiences that we are carrying with us energetically, that are filters that are in between us and our real reality.
Yeah, thank you for explaining that. And it just goes back to the point of, like taking back your power,
Hmm.
like, being able to see things differently after, you've given yourself the time and the chance to heal
Yeah.
from those traumas.
Yeah, that's true. I compared this part of the aspect, the process, with like sometimes sound therapy is not so known to people. I compare it to Chinese medicine, because if you talk about acupuncture, most people know what that is and how it works. And it's like the
Hmm.
placement of those little needles on your body in areas
Hmm.
where the practitioner is perceiving that there are blockages of energy. So the needles will
Hmm.
release that energy to keep circulating in the body, causing the healing of whatever the condition is that you're treating through acupuncture. And that's the thing too. I did acupuncture for allergies before, and it was
Hmm.
phenomenal how it was able to heal the allergies. And so I compared the sound healing with acupuncture in that point, in that sense, because we use pretty much the same type of structure. We also look at certain organs in the body as holding on to different emotions and feelings, and the same way that Chinese medicine does. And so I feel like it's an easier way for people to kind of wrap their head around sound therapy if it's a brand new thing to them, if they never heard about it. It's very similar, the process of releasing of blockages of energy.
A big part of someone's healing journey is becoming more self aware, more aware of how you show up in different spaces and also your habits. So be sure to check out the self awareness quiz on my website, www.awakentoyourpassion.com. There's a series of questions that you could use to really do a deep dive into getting to know who you are, and so you can show up better for yourself. Yeah. And I wonder because sometimes people aren't aware of their traumas. They've probably pushed it back so much in their unconscious that they are not really aware of it, or aren't really intending to go on the process of healing it. So when people come to you, is that what they come to you for, or are they experiencing physical symptoms that then lead to other things coming up?
Hmm. Yeah, there is actually a variety of different reasons why clients show up. And it's kind of both ways. There's a lot of people that are very aware of
Mm-hmm.
their trauma, their childhood and everything that has happened, and they want to treat specifically stuff like that. There
Mm-hmm.
are people that they are aware of the trauma and what the trauma is causing today, like how that trauma from childhood is affecting their behavior as an adult today, and they want
Mm-hmm.
to, you know, figure out how to shift that behavior that might be, a destructive behavior or something like that. And they know the power of the sound to provide that shift of, the way you are behaving. And there are also the people that show up unaware, and they just come with whatever the end result of that situation is. And what I mean by that is like they have chronic pain somewhere in the body, or they have insomnia, or difficulty, with like digestive system, or, it's a variety of physical things that can develop that are
Mm-hmm.
coming from somewhere like a traumatic situation. And when we say traumatic, it doesn't have to be like they say the big T trauma, something like
Mm-hmm.
extremely hardcore that few of us have survived. It doesn't have to be
Mm-hmm.
like that. It can be what they call the small T trauma, you know, smaller things that happen to us throughout our lives that really shock our system, and it creates that traumatic response from our nervous system. It doesn't have to be something like, the size of the world, but something small also can have that shock response to your nervous system. And if you are unaware of it, you try to just continue keeping your living your life like nothing has happened, like, there was something small and I'm fine, and that kind of stuff. But it starts influencing your behavior afterwards, little by little, because there is that shock on your nervous system that wasn't released. And so when we start working with a person like that, and we start working with the relaxation of the nervous system, and that stuff start coming up, a lot of the times they have, memories or thoughts coming up about a specific situation when we are working with them. And then we talk about with them like, well, today we are working on this kind of specific energy in this specific area of the body. And sometimes the realization that they have, it's so big that they start even like crying on the table, like, realizing how much that situation that they thought was small and just ignored had caused so much changes afterwards. And they can definitely relate. For instance, if they came to work on a chronic pain or something that has been sitting there for a while, they come
Mm-hmm.
into the realization of like, oh my gosh, that was exactly when the pain started and I didn't even realize. So
Mm-hmm.
there are people that come without the awareness, but then they gain the awareness as we go through the process of what was the cause of everything.
Yeah, and thank you so much for touching on the fact that trauma doesn't have to be this huge thing. The way most of us tend to think about it when we think about trauma, it could be small things too, because going back to some of the things that you discussed already, like it has to do with our personal experiences.
Yes.
And we might experience something supposedly small, but it has a greater impact on us. And then you touched on the fact that trauma shows up in physical manifestations. A lot of times we don't really link trauma with our back pain, trauma with our headache, trauma with our gut problems. But there is more and more research and more showing connection between trauma and our physical health.
Yes. Yes, that's for sure. Trauma and stress, which a lot of the times the stress is caused by the little traumas that we don't acknowledge them as a traumatic experience. It builds up this stress that keeps escalating until it
Mhm.
develops into something physical. Yeah, you're right. There's a lot of research out there now just proving all of that, that all these small traumatic experiences and stresses that we hold on to, that we don't do any practice or anything to release, it's the root of all the physical conditions that we are developing today.
So where might someone start? Um, I don't know, like is we know healing is a journey, and people might be at different points of their journey. But where would you suggest someone start? Like, what are some things that they could do?
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, if you feel called to sound or vibration therapy, you feel like you're ready, just reach out. I would love to elaborate and explain more to you if you're curious about it. But if it is like the beginning of your healing journey, and you don't really feel called to sound healing yet, or you don't feel like that's for you yet, I would say like the way that I started was of tremendous importance for the development of my healing, because it was the simplicity of the practices that I came across. Like today, there are a lot of methods that you can go to that are very expensive, very elaborate, and might be very effective. However, I love the simple things. I love the simplicity of the methods that don't take much. So
Mhm.
I would say that the simple things that I teach are things like meditation, and it doesn't have to be anything too elaborate. The same thing, it doesn't have to be like a 20-30 minute meditation, off the bat. If you haven't been doing anything, if you are new into meditation, at least a few moments, I would say, at least like 2-3 minutes daily, to sit by yourself and just sit with yourself quietly,
Mhm.
allow all the distractions to be put away, to be shut off, like literally everything, until you are able to shut off also the thoughts, because the thoughts, we also get addicted to them, and it's just this cycle, non-stop monkey mind. So I would say one of
Mhm.
the first things that would be very, very beneficial for you to see the other things, to have the vision for the other practices that could be beneficial to you, would be to just be able to cultivate that awareness that comes from meditating, from just sitting with yourself and being quiet and allowing the stillness to be there, and see what comes up for you. Like, we have very different ways that our bodies, our egos try to keep us away from this meditation, from this sitting down and just allowing yourself, being with yourself. There's a lot of people that there's the busy mind. Oh, I have too much to do, I don't have time for this. They're
Mhm.
the people that have the aches and pains and itches and everything that the body is trying to do to keep you away from meditating. And meditation, it's like the hygiene of the mind. It's, I feel like it's as necessary as all the other hygiene routines that we have in our lives, like brushing our teeth and taking a shower. washing our food and stuff like that. I feel like, why do all of that and leave your mind in static, with all the
Mm-hmm.
information, all the noise that are around in our environment throughout the day? Why not clear that up so that you can have more contact with yourself and more awareness of what's going on with you within?
And thank you so much for saying that because, yes, self care, right? That's a part of practicing good self care. It should be a part of our routine, like everything else that we do. But we tend to just say, oh, when we have the time, we're going to do it. So thank you for making it, known that it should be a part of our routine, and that it's okay to just start with 2, 3 minutes.
Hmm.
I think, like you said, one of the most important part is just making sure that we're not judging ourselves.
Yes.
Set that aside and just listen and be
Hmm.
in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. 2, 3 minutes to create a certain consistency of being with yourself on a daily basis. And it's like you said, free of judgment. The thoughts will show up and sometimes they are annoying. Just don't judge. What you resist persist. So just let it be.
Hmm.
Let the thoughts come, welcome them as they come, welcome them as they go, and just let it pass through you. It's fine. It's
Yeah.
exactly what you said. You're right. Free of judgment, because if you start judging everything, it's going to be such a stressful practice that you're going to walk away from it, like it's from the beginning. So just allow it to be. It's just the isness, like we were talking about before with perception. Once we
Hmm.
eliminate these blocks that are interfering with how we are perceiving our reality, then what's
Hmm.
left is just reality itself, just as is, without that interpretation, without that judgment. So it's the same thing with the meditation, like no judgment, no interpretation, just be.
Yeah. So, as we're coming to a close, is there one final message you have for listeners?
So usually when I close speaking engagements, it's pretty much where I go. It's this helping people to start. So I tell them I have a 12 program for a path to self-awareness. And that's a long thing. But then the summarized version with the 3 quick steps to increase your sense of self-awareness is: number one, prayer. And if you are not religious, that's fine. It's just a talk with your creator. Thank your creator for the air that you breathe, and for the legs that you walk on, and simple things like that, for like a couple of minutes daily. And I would say, like, do this for 30 days and see what happens. So number one, prayer. Number two, meditate, sit quietly, see what's going to come up. And number three, journal. Just let it out. Whatever comes up, let it out unedited for a few minutes, just to see what's in your mind, to be able to look at it, what is going on in there. So if you do these 3 practices first thing in the morning for like about 30 days, I would love to receive an email from you with what did you notice? What shifts did you notice? And you will notice, because I get emails from people that they notice like shifts that they would never imagine that would happen. People continue with the same behavior and it doesn't trigger them anymore because of these practices of self-awareness. So I would love to receive an email after 30 days from your listeners, just with their input, their feedback. What is it that they notice in their own experience after these practices?
Oh, that is so awesome. Prayer bringing you like kind of outside of yourself, the meditation, like going back in, and then the journal to really reflect on how you're feeling and how these things are impacting your life. So wonderful. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
So, how can we find you?
So I am on Facebook and Instagram, and the links are on my website. My website is
Mhm.
my first name, Mayara, Mayara dash Souza, SOUZA.com. And then all the links will be there.
Okay. Mayara, it's been so lovely having you on Awaken with me. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the invite.
Awesome. Today's learning outcome is that you hold the power to make changes in your life and you don't have to accept things for how they are. And so, to do that, it's important that you become more self aware because self awareness gives you a better grasp of your habits and how you are showing up presently, so that you are empowered to make better decisions for yourself about how you do want to show up in your life in healthier ways for yourself and also those around you. So be sure to check out the self-awareness quiz on my website. It is totally free and you get to work at your own pace on your healing journey. Thanks for joining us on today's podcast. If you haven't yet done so, hit the subscribe button for new content every 2 weeks.